So any new parents that are going to have a baby, expect to have your car seat expire.
Or multiple children. Thinking that you're going to reuse this car seat for the rest of your life, or the rest of your procreative life, if that's a word. And you're not, right? Because it expires.
Welcome back to the Beck Bodie No Bonds podcast. My name is Ben Beck. I'm here with Matt Maurizio.
Well done.
Maurizio.
Exactly.
No long eye. Before we begin, I'd like to remind everybody to check us out at beckbodie.com, Instagram at beckbodie, or also on our personal Instagram pages at Matt Maurizio.
Nice.
At bbeck3333 or Jim Bodie, who's not with us today, but we miss him.
We miss you, Jim.
jbodie71 on Instagram. I think he's up to 3 posts now since we started this.
Guy's on fire.
Which is great. But we want to welcome everybody to today's podcast where we're spending a lot of time helping folks make sense of some of the financial decisions that they have to make or will have to make in their lives. And it's our duty, we feel, to provide clarity and educate folks so that they can make the right decisions as they move forward in life. Today, Matt, tell us what we're going to talk about today.
Well,
what are we talking about today?
We're talking about something near and dear to our hearts. So, collectively, between the two of us, there are a grand total of 9 children, 7 years and younger.
And growing?
And growing, at least on this end.
All right.
There's not a birth announcement. That's not what this That's not what this podcast is. But yes, so we're going to talk about the financial considerations when you're having a baby, what to think about, and it's no secret with this many kids between us. Like, they cost more money. I mean, there's car seats, there's seats that they eat in, there's seats that they don't eat in or ride in, but they sit in. And then there's pillows and there's bibs and utensils and toys and, activities. So that we get it. Like, that isn't actually what we want to talk about today because that's not a secret.
Before we begin, though, can I just bring something up, which I always found hilarious since I started having kids? Yeah. Car seats have expiration dates.
Thank you for bringing that up. I mean, we're going to go on a tangent here because I have an argument with my wife all the time. Like, this is plastic. It's not expiring. She says, no, it's a safety thing.
You left it out of the fridge too long. All right. And now you're going to get a new car seat.
Right. Sorry, I forgot to put it back in the fridge when I was done riding. Yeah. What a joke.
Yeah, I don't understand that.
So any new parents that are going to have a baby, expect to have your car seat expire.
Or multiple children. Thinking that you're going to reuse this car seat for the rest of your life or the rest of your procreative life, if that's a word. And you're not. Right? Because it expires.
Yeah, or you could be like me and just break the law and argue with your wife and say the car seat still works, and then eventually lose the battle.
Now, the goldfish or the yogurt raisins that are ground into the car seat, those definitely have an expiration date. Yeah. All right, so you might want to get rid of the car seat in general because it smells.
Yeah.
But, car seats actually have expiration dates. But I'm sorry to interrupt you. Carry on.
I'm glad you brought that up. So yes. Children cost a lot of money, but we wanted to address some of the stuff. I mean, I know personally that I did not think about before children or even in the early years of children. I mean, granted, the oldest is only 7, so I guess I can technically still be in the early years. But my point was I just had a kid. I'm living in a fog. I have not left that fog, but that's a different story. What else do I need to be doing? I'm an adult. I'm responsible for these lives now. What is there stuff that I should be doing that I don't know about? And that's kind of what we wanted to bring up.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, we come from different, while we all have a bunch of kids, we've got some similarities. We both played baseball, went to the same college and things of that nature, but we came from different backgrounds, obviously.
Yeah.
You didn't start in the financial industry. I had the benefit of starting in the financial industry, so some of the things we're going to be talking about today were based upon the nature of my industry. I was aware of and I was able to take advantage of. But a lot of folks aren't in the financial industry. I'll say a lot of folks in the financial industry still don't take advantage as they should of certain things that they need to put in place And owning Beck Bodie, opening that company, our company, now 6.5 years ago. Now I already had children at the time, but that caused me to go through some of these processes again in terms of some of the things we'll talk about, from insurance, estate plans, and things of that nature. But I don't know.
So let's start with a trust, a will and a trust. Okay, we already identified. I did not start right from school into finance, right? So this was, in my mind, a trust was something that the Rockefellers, the Carnegies, those families had trusts. I didn't grow up with a trust. I don't need a trust. That's not until I'm at the buku bucks level.
Right.
What I have learned since coming in, and you can explain and elaborate on this, is a living trust is a really good way to protect your children from going through the courts or ending up, should you die, because that's what a living trust is really, it comes into play, is if you die and your spouse dies. Having that in place bypasses all those probate court problems that you may get into, and your kids could potentially wind up in hands that you didn't really want them to wind up in, because the state of Massachusetts, which is where we're in, or whatever state you're in, decided that was probably the best suited person to take care of your kids now that you're gone.
Can I say that in a different way?
You can say it anyway, yeah.
Just to simplify things, because again, as we talk about a lot, is our industry does a very good job at making somewhat simple concepts, or what are simple concepts very complex. A trust is nothing more than a piece of paper. It's an entity that dictates, a piece of paper that dictates what happens when you die.
Yep.
With your assets when you die.
And people are going to say, isn't that a will? Isn't that what a will is?
Yeah, but there's a little bit of difference between a will versus a trust. A trust is a legal document which gets, and I don't know how far into it we want to go in terms of the differences here, but...
Well, I think just explain why a trust is a level up from just a standard will, and why that actually can be more beneficial for a parent than just a straight up will.
Right. So in terms of the trust versus a will is essentially your ability is to pass on certain items, right?
Yep.
When you pass away. Where a trust is as Matt was alluding to, a more in-depth legal document where number one, a simple living trust dictates what happens to your assets when you pass, but also, depending on what your financial situation is, a trust is also a tax and can be a way of minimizing certain taxes, like estate planning taxes and things of that nature, depending on how your assets are situated, what is the value of your assets, and again, certainly where those assets go and when they go to your beneficiaries. For example, you can set a trust up, of course, a little bit different from a will, where I say, hey, look, I've got these assets, but I don't want my beneficiaries receiving these assets when I die.
Beneficiaries being children, we'll say.
Let's say being children, until maybe they hit a certain age.
Yep.
Because you may die when, God forbid, they're very young, and you may not want a 12-year-old getting access to a multi-million-dollar estate.
Right. And the court would say a will hold off. The guardian will have that money until the child is a legal adult, 18, and then it's theirs, right?
Sure, right.
You don't have that flexibility in a will to say, like I did, okay, if my wife and I die, okay, the kids are going to have X number of dollars when they're 25, they'll get X more dollars when they're 30, or 20, shoot, now I got to go look at it and see what I said. But that's the point, is that I staggered how much they're getting and at what time they're getting it, because I can, and what we also do is that, like, if at the very end of all of it, those guardians that not even brave enough but kind enough to take on those 5 kids, assuming my wife and I died today, we give them a little bit of money at the end that they don't even know is coming. And that you can literally structure in a trust however you want. But I think the most important point here, so we can continue on with some of the other important stuff, is that A trust allows you total flexibility to decide where your money's going, when it's going, who it's going to, where your children are going, who they're going to, and whatever other stipulations you want about your personal life, all go inside that living piece of paper.
And one more point on that is that because there's oftentimes confusion with a lot of folks that we talk to. It's like, okay, I kind of understand what a trust is, but then, my attorney said that I have to put assets. How do I put an asset into the trust? And what that actually is, it's just a matter of, think about your checking account at your bank. A trust is a legal document, and so what effectively your attorney is saying is that you are simply retitling your account legally, your checking account, in the name of that trust. So instead of Ben Beck checking account, it's now the Benjamin Beck Revocable Trust, dated 2016 account. It's titled in the account. So what that means now is, what happens to those assets, because now my account is titled in the name of the trust, what happens to those assets if something happens to me is dictated by that piece of paper and not just by will or probate.
Yep.
In that sense.
Yep. And this is a good segue into the next topic, is insurances. Your life insurance, if you have a child, is something you'll want to have. And that insurance, if you die, you can assign to go into that trust. And that can be where a lot of those assets you're talking about will be divvied up to per child over certain times. So insurances, I never considered life insurance really until I had children. I was getting on a plane with my wife for a performance trip at my old job. And I said to her, we're both flying. What if the plane goes down? I mean, I don't want to think like that, but we had, I think, 4 kids at the time. I didn't have life insurance. So you better believe I got on the horn and got some insurance.
Absolutely. And it's again, another question we get a lot, right? It's like, do I need it? And then of course, the $100 million question is how much is enough, right?
Yep.
And again, we talked in the last podcast about defining the step one of anything and making sense of your financial decisions. Define the objective first, right? And so you're about to get on that plane.
Yep.
Come to the realization, I have 4 children. So what does that mean if something happens to me and my wife? Okay, well, it means, at the end of the day, it means what it means to you in particular, right? It doesn't necessarily mean, what it means to somebody else. But what does it mean to you? So what it means to you, I'm going to guess, is that, that plane, something happens to me, my 4 children need to be taken care of, right? Financially and otherwise until they're 18. And coming with that is, if something happens to you and your wife, God forbid, then you've got to provide support for whoever is taking responsibility for them, which would be dictated, of course, by, could be by your will and trust or so on. Healthcare proxy, is something we'll talk about in a minute. And then you might think, hey, well, I also want to have college paid for. So it might go into your calculation of how much is college going to cost. Kid, your oldest is 7 years old. My oldest is 7 years old. So we're going to, push that forward 18 years and do that calculation. And so these are examples of certain things that are commonly, or we think should commonly be thought about in terms of trying to figure out life insurance. A, do you need it? Do you have things that you want to take care of financially, paying off your mortgage, taking care of your kids, your home, other assets, liabilities? And then how much is based upon what you're comfortable saying, okay, well, I do want a certain standard of living for my wife, who's a survivor, or my children who survived me, and so on and so forth. So the main idea here is that first defining if there are things in your life, and for a 23-year-old that doesn't own any assets, doesn't have any children, or so on and so forth, life insurance might not be something that's reasonable or realistic to think about at that point. But as you start to move forward in life and you have certain things you want to take care of later in life, it's certainly something that you should, at minimum, have a consultation with a financial advisor about.
Yep. And I mean, on that, we typically will most of the time see that a term insurance makes a lot of sense, but we don't have to get into
Right.
exactly because those are case by case.
Future podcast.
Yeah, future podcast. And one other insurance that I learned coming into this is that umbrella insurance, where you have a home insurance, homeowners insurance, an auto insurance, and then this umbrella insurance is a little bit more per month, not a lot, but what it does is it says, okay, if somebody trips and falls on your property and they break a leg and then they sue you, they no longer are going after you with that umbrella insurance. They are going after your insurance provider's lawyers and legal team. So you better believe there's a whole lot more firepower behind you with your entire insurance company's legal team coming to bat versus you trying to find a lawyer.
Yeah, that umbrella insurance, also known as personal liability insurance. One thing that's overlooked with a lot of folks is, okay, well, I've got car insurance, right? And but of course, in any car insurance, there is a certain limit in terms of what is paid by that car insurance to cover. And for example, if you're at fault and it turns out to be something that is tremendously expensive, you may not have enough car insurance benefit to pay for that. And so that's where something like an umbrella insurance would kick in as a personal liability to cover those extra costs. So as Matt said, umbrella is something that you could talk to a financial advisor, an insurance agent about. It is, compared to anything else, relatively cheap in terms of it put into place. But certainly it's one of those things, as most insurance is, you pay for it with the hopes you never need to use it. But certainly if something does happen where it creates a loss, you definitely want to have some sort of coverage in place to make sure that money's not coming out of your pocket, but it's from something that you're paying into.
Okay, so two more things that I can think of that joining this world opened my eyes to. You mentioned it earlier, healthcare proxy. Explain what that is and why that's important.
Yeah, so just like a trust dictates what happens, in simplistic terms, it's an entity, that a piece of paper that dictates what happens, after death. A healthcare proxy should be thought about. Okay, what if I am incapacitated from a health perspective? I'm in the hospital. I'm in a coma. What happens then? Right? In terms of things like who do I appoint to take over the responsibilities? If there's a certain amount of time before, if I'm on life support and things of that nature, if there's a certain amount of time. So think of a healthcare proxy as sort of a trust in a sense, but it's a legal document that tells, hey, what happens if something from a healthcare perspective happens, and these decisions are made. A healthcare proxy is making decisions in advance of these particular scenarios.
The last thing that opened my eyes as a parent that I want to bring up today is how, from a financial perspective, where kids cost me money that I wasn't really thinking about is the efficiency of my time and what I see as worth paying for with children versus worth paying for without. Okay, examples can be, and mostly there's services that you're going to do that will require your time, that now with children, you want to actually spend time with your children and be a present parent. Maybe you are going to essentially outsource services that you were previously doing on your own. Maybe it's dry cleaning, laundry, snow plowing, if you're in cold states, landscaping, grocery delivery, any of these things that really actually buy you more time to be present with your kids and effective at your career are things that you actually start to pay for as a parent that you really maybe didn't think about.
It's amazing how having kids changes your perspective.
Yeah, I was incredibly inefficient with time.
Well, I tell you, before I had kids, the thought of having somebody else mow my lawn was something that just didn't. But after having children and understanding exactly what Matt is talking about in terms of one thing that we can choose to a certain extent is how we spend our time and what we prioritize in our own lives. And the beauty of, in today's day and age, is technology makes that a hell of a lot easier. And that goes into, you mentioned one thing near and dear to my heart is grocery delivery. Being able to go online and have groceries delivered and not have to jump in the car and spend 45 minutes or an hour or 2 hours, whatever, walking around the grocery store and loading everything in the car and so on, taking away from activities with my children, taking activities away from work and so on. So technology, obviously, living in today's day and age, makes things a lot easier in that respect. But there are certainly really important considerations when you have children. And I'll be the first to admit that prior to having children, as I said, things that I didn't think I would ever do and take advantage of, I am certainly taking advantage of now. And I would say for anybody having children, be open-minded about making your life easier and allowing yourself to prioritize the things you want to prioritize.
That's all I got for what opened my eyes today for when I had kids. There's a lot that opened my eyes, but financially, I think those are some important
We could fill up a
things.
lot of podcasts with
The whole, too much.
with that. But we appreciate you joining us today.
Thank
Again, find us at beckbodie.com, Instagram handle at beckbodie, podcast on iTunes, Spotify. Again, we mentioned it in a prior podcast, but in our opinion, for one of the best sources of education with respect to making decisions about finances and such, Dancing with the Analysts by David Malik is a great educational novel, not financial textbook, but novel that gives you some really pertinent information about how you should look at the world in terms of making decisions about your finances. So highly recommend taking a look at that. Direct message us, email us at social@beckbodie for more information in the book and other financial topics that you would like to see us talk about in the future.
Thank you for joining us.